Hey YouTube, how you guys doing? My name is Kyle, you know me as Dragonmar, and welcome to a new video. We're going to be going over how to win on eco rounds as well as on force rounds. I've got 10 tips prepared here, so let's jump in. Actually, before we jump into it, make sure you guys are following me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Dragonmar. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. We do a lot of VOD reviews on there. So if you guys are interested in getting your VOD reviewed like I do on the YouTube channel here, make sure you guys join the Discord as well, because that's where you can actually submit them, and I hope to see you guys in there. But yeah, that's it. Let's start now. Now, before we jump into the tips, I just want to talk about why these rounds are so important and what a save or an eco or a force round is. So, an eco or a save round. Eco is short for economy, so it's an economy round, a save round. These are rounds where your goal going into the round was to just save enough money to be able to full buy in the next round. A full buy, of course, means armor, weapon, and hopefully utility. However, a force round is a little different. A force round is a round where you're actually going to be using all of your money or a good portion of it to force yourself into the round with better weapons, armor, and utility. So these are rounds a lot where you'll see light shields, and you'll see things like bulldogs, maybe marshals or Ares, things of that nature, where you're not going to have the Vandal Phantom full armor and full utility, but some portion of that. And that's normally because on a force round, your goal is to really win that round. You're doing everything you can to win. Well, a save or an eco round, the goals of those rounds, your goal is already complete. It's to save money for the next round so you can full buy. But the sort of secondary goal, if you will, in these rounds is to do as much damage as you can to the enemy. Remember, every shot you get on them is new armor they have to buy. That's 1,000 credits down the drain. And every gun you take away from them is a gun hopefully you can save for the next round. Really, really important to understand that these rounds tend to be very pivotable, very important. In the grand scheme of things in games. A lot of people forget, but sometimes the turning point in a game is when you won an eco round. So don't throw these rounds away, and hopefully some of this advice I'm going to give is really going to drive that home and give you some new ideas. So let's begin. All right, starting things off with tip number 1, and that is to stay as close range as possible. So this is a tip about your positioning. One thing you have to keep in mind when it comes to save rounds is that you are outgunned big time, and one of the main things in Valorant when it comes to being outgunned is you're going to be outranged. So specifically, weapons like the Vandal and the Phantom excel at long range. Well, maybe you're stuck with like a classic or a shorty. Potentially someone might have forced into like a bulldog or a specter or a stinger. Either way, you're outranged. Really important to remember on these rounds to stay close. So where should you be playing then, you might ask? Well, on defense, really good idea is to play on the entrances of bomb sites. By using your smokes, you can stay very close range and have a great chance at getting kills. I personally love playing in entrances to doorways, whether that's into site or close to it. You know, playing on places like sewer, on bind, on A, I love heading down there, playing in that little entrance and getting my shorty kills. So remember, stay close. Do not take those long range duels. Tip number 2 might seem simple, but it's really not, and that's to buy abilities. Yes, you're on a save round, you're on an eco round, but worst comes to worst, you carry these abilities over. But best case scenario, you're able to use them in a big way. There's a few that I'm really thinking about here, and those would be your smokes, so on Brimstone, and then I'm also thinking flashes. Oh, by the way, another smoke would obviously be Jet as well, to a lesser degree. But I'm also thinking about flashes here. So you've got your Phoenix, you've got Reyna, you've got Omen, you know, you've got Breach now with his 3 flashes. One thing a lot of people don't realize is just that little bit of utility can sometimes completely turn your save round around, because a lot of the times the enemy isn't going to fully expect it, or if they do expect it, it's still so powerful you're still going to be able to get kills off of it. So really good idea here is to buy smokes and to buy flashes, and then even if you're on classics, it doesn't really matter because you have those abilities now, which sometimes is all it takes to get kills. A lot of people skip this step here. A lot of people don't buy abilities at all, and I think that's completely wasteful. You're really throwing away a good opportunity, if nothing else, to get the bomb down, but really upping your chances to win the round. Tip number 3 is probably the best save weapon in the game, and that's a shorty. Now, the shorty is a 200 credit shotgun, one of the cheapest weapons in the game, and it's one of the most impactful. Now, you have to remember, you have to play very close with the shorty, but this is one of those guns that completely changed the way I played coming from beta and then coming into the actual release of the game. I was not a shorty player at all during beta, and I didn't realize what I was missing until I tried it, and let me tell you, there is no going back. If you do not currently use the shorty, please do whatever you can to get your hands on it during these save rounds. It's 200 credits. Normally, that'll never hurt you enough to where you can't purchase for the next round. Buy it and try it out. Remember, really important to stay close range with this weapon, but you're almost always guaranteed at least one kill if the enemy team walks into you without first flashing you or mauling you out of your corners. You want to play close range, just like I talked about in tip number 1, but the shorty is by far the best weapon for eco rounds. When you're buying like with nothing, with only a few hundred credits each, maybe an ability here or there, the shorty is sometimes all it takes to win those rounds. I know it's 1 rounds for me. You've seen it in my videos before where I get a 3K with a shorty. It works, trust me. Give it a shot. You don't have to use it all the time, but it definitely has a lot of value. Tip number 4 is to apply pressure around the map equally and just like you were doing in previous gun rounds. Remember, when you are playing on an eco round, it's really common to all be in similar positions or playing together. Sometimes you'll completely leave a bomb site. In those situations, it's really easy to forget maybe to do the smoke that you've been doing the entire game that could prevent an early push. One thing you don't want to do on eco rounds is give away where you are, because then you've completely lost the round. If you give away that the whole team is sitting on A and the enemy team just walks into B, well, guess what? There's really not a good chance you're retaking. So in these situations, if you've been flashing certain positions, or in this case, really, I'm thinking of smokes. So if you're an Omen or a Brim player and you've been smoking a certain side of the map, but maybe you're stacking another site, I would keep smoking because you don't want to give away the fact that absolutely nobody is there. You want to make it seem like, hey, there could still be people here. You know, keep the enemy team guessing. Never give away information for free. And this is a super cheap and easy way to do that. Tip number 5 kind of branches a little bit off of what I was saying there at the end. Tip 5 is to stack a bomb site. So if you're on defense, I guess this also works in attack too, which would be a rush, but really I'm talking about stacking a site on defense. If you're saving on defense, sometimes you can get a kind of a cheap and cheesy win out of every single person on your team playing on one site together. Now, like I was saying before, very important to still, apply presence, make it so it's hard for them to tell where you are, but on certain maps, it's really, really nice to have the entire team on a site when the enemy team tries to take it. You guys play off of each other. This works a lot better on the second round. So on the second round of a game after you've lost, or the second round of half, if you lose that pistol round, a lot of the time stacking a site with classics is enough to win the round. But this is a good strat sometimes, especially if a team has shown sort of a lot of presence over to one portion of the map. Try stacking a site with your team. You're going to want like 3 or 4 of your players to play very defensive and not show themselves at all. Remember, when you're stacking a site, very, very important to play very passively. You don't want to give away that there are a ton of people there. Maybe just have one person making noise, make it seem like 1 or 2 people are playing there, and then let the enemies come to you. Now, this isn't always going to work. It probably works, 20% of the time, but sometimes that's all it takes. Remember, these rounds are rounds you are going to struggle to win, and that is because of how it should be. This is nothing new. When you win an eco round, you shouldn't be thinking to yourself, oh man, this is normal. It's not. It's a lot more rare, I think, than people realize. And tip number 6, it's one of my personal favorites. It is to always back your teammates up for those trades. Now, this is really important on these eco rounds because you're going to be outgunned big time. So if your teammate is pushing, push with them. If you see a teammate getting pushed, try to go help them, because in these rounds, a lot of the times with a gun like a classic, for example, which is just a starter pistol, your team is actually going to do some damage to the enemy if they don't instantly headshot you, which leaves them relatively weak. All it takes is one more person there with a classic to finish them off, and then you're in a 4v4 and you have a gun. A lot of the problem of what happens on these eco rounds is that everyone kind of goes off and does their own thing and they play solo. That's probably the worst thing you can do on these rounds, because it's really important, unless you're using a shorty, that you have someone there to back you up. So if you're not a shorty player, make sure you are sticking with your buddies on these eco rounds because of how important it is to trade off of the classic damage. This is one one of those things where, you know, you might, if every single person takes a 1v1 and does 80 damage to them, you're going to get no kills. But if you start taking 2v1s where the first person does 80 damage, you know, you're going to get a lot more kills, do a lot more damage, and maybe even win those rounds. Really important to trade with your team and to stick with them regardless of whether they're getting aggressive or playing defensively and just getting pushed. Tip number 7 is about paying attention to your economy when you're saving or forcing. One of the most important things to remember is that you can sometimes accidentally overbuy and then you can't afford for the next round. So this is really about force rounds. When you're forcing up, you're still going for wins, but sometimes as well in save rounds, you might get a little, you might say, hey, I want to buy a sheriff this round. Well, you have to make sure that you're not accidentally buying too much. And here's what I mean. 3,300 credits is sort of the minimum amount to be able to buy into the next round with any hope of, you know, doing well. And the reason for that is because it allows you to buy a rifle and light armor. Now, light armor is already a huge disadvantage because of the fact that a phantom now is a one-shot kill to you. However, you're really looking for 3,900 credits. 3,900 credits is going to always allow you to have full armor as well as a Vandal or a Phantom. Now, that is sort of the key to saving successfully. That is like, but that's the kind of the lowest bar. You're really looking for over 3,900 because, remember guys, really important to have utility. A lot of the times, the reason you lose these gun rounds is because people overbought in a pistol round, or they overbought, excuse me, not in a pistol round, they overbought in a save round or a force round where they just bought too much utility, or they overbought a weapon and now they don't have any utility, and you're trying to dry run into a site because your brim can't afford smokes, or because your breach can't afford flashes. Really important to always pay attention to your money. Remember, 3,300 is like the bare minimum. You're always pretty much looking for 3,900 plus. All right, so on a save round, remember, you are looking to save money. So tip number 8 is what to buy on a save. To me, you've really got two options, kind of a third. On a save round, you don't really want to buy armor. That's not the point of a save. Then you start getting into the more of a force terminology. On a save, what you want to do is you either want to stick with your classic or buy a shorty. However, I think, and this is sort of something I'm realizing more recently, especially at the high levels of play, that sometimes a sheriff can actually be a pretty worthwhile investment. The reason for that is because sometimes, depending on the range you engage at, a sheriff can one-shot headshot a lot of players and catch them completely off guard. So if a teammate has like a little bit, maybe a little bit of utility, a flash or something, and they flash your sheriff player, I think it can actually work. So on save rounds, stick with your classics, try shorties, but perhaps one player could use a sheriff as long as they can buy in the next round, and see if maybe that is enough to make the difference. But one thing I want to add on to this is we're not just talking about guns, we're also talking about utility. On save rounds, if you can afford it, try buying smokes, and like I was saying earlier, try buying flashes. This is really important. On these save rounds sometimes, like I was saying in tip number 2, this is all it's going to take for you to turn the tide. You can enter a bomb site with one flash, maybe you overwhelm an enemy, suddenly you have sight, a weapon, and bomb down. There's a lot of plays you can make with a little bit of utility. Little money goes a long way. Just make sure when you're saving, you are saving successfully and you can actually afford it in the next round. Okay, tip number 9 is a little more exciting. We're talking about what to buy on a force round. So, like I was saying, a force round is a round where you are forcing into. You are spending your money because you want to win that round. You're not saving for the next round in this situation. So, what do you buy? Well, if you can afford a bulldog, go for it. I have found the bulldog to be very good when you're ADSing, right? So that's right clicking. When you're ADSing with a bulldog, the burst is actually pretty deadly, but there are a few things you should be looking for in these force rounds. One, can you afford a phantom or a vandal with light armor? I tend to go for that on my force rounds. I think it is super strong. A lot of people don't understand just how good the Vandal or the Phantom is compared to a lot of the other weapons. So they'll sacrifice light armor for full armor with a Bulldog or a Spectre, and then they just get outgunned because those weapons don't one-shot to the head. Remember, when you're choosing a Vandal or a Phantom, you have that potential to one-shot headshot people, and that is something that a lot of these SMGs, shotguns and stuff, they just don't have that potential. So you have to remember that because it's extremely valuable. Another thing here though is if you can't light armor Vandal or Phantom, sometimes using full armor Spectre is pretty good. This is like a go-to one for a lot of people, but don't get too comfortable with the Spectre, honestly. It has a lot of downsides, especially at range, but if you choose to play up close with it, you can do some really good things. Now, another great option is if you're playing like in a very tight spot, maybe garage on Haven, you could try buying a Judge. and a judge with light armor, full armor, whatever you want. Those are really good as well for force rounds because you can sometimes catch 1 to 2 players off guard before they realize where you are, and then you probably die. But those 1 to 2 kills, sometimes all it takes. Now, what do I not recommend on force rounds? I would pretty much never recommend buying a weapon and no armor. Really important to have armor in these rounds, especially full armor, because you don't want to get one-shot headshotted if possible. You never want to be vulnerable to a pistol either for a headshot kill. That's why it's really important to have armor in these rounds. On top of that, you should also be looking to buy as much utility as you can on force rounds, but remember, prioritize the things I've been talking about, which are smokes and flashes. And finally, tip number 10 is to be more confident with using your ult on these save rounds. Sometimes, guys, you can find yourself in situations where you have a great opportunity for an ult, but you're holding on to it because you're just not sure if it's going to work. I say go for it in a lot of these situations. Oftentimes, we hold on to it for too long looking for the perfect opportunity, and we just end up wasting the actual value of it. A lot of our ultimates are best used sort of in very hopeful situations. Now, there is one ult in particular that has a lot of value in save rounds, and that is Jett's ult. Jett essentially turns into a one-man army, and with a good Jett, you can follow them into a site, trade off her kills, and get weapons, get geared up, and then take those sites, plant, and play off of that. So if you are a Jett player, definitely be looking to use your ultimates in save rounds to give your team an advantage. However, also, breaches, brimstones. You guys can use your ult to help open up sites. Brims can ult tough spots like on U-Haul, Hookah, or in Windows, even Heaven as well. And then Breach can use his site to use his ultimate to open up sites as well. Do not look at your ult as just a sort of utility that can only be used on buy rounds or on gun rounds. You can absolutely use them on save rounds without it being a complete waste. Remember, any kill you get is great, but sometimes the reason you're losing these rounds is because not enough people are investing their ults into these rounds. Now, I'm not saying go crazy with it, be smart with your play, but don't be afraid. Trust me, there is a lot more value in your ult on these save rounds than a lot of people give it credit. Alright guys, I think we're going to end the video there. I hope these tips helped you. These are 10 tips to help you win those save and force rounds. Remember, these rounds are so important, and it's really important you take them serious. Don't just throw these away. Don't just run it down mid. Try winning these rounds and doing as much damage as you can. Go for those extra frags, whatever it takes, do damage. It really, really helps. Now, if you did enjoy the video, remember, please leave a like, comment, subscribe for more. I make videos multiple times a week, so hope to see you guys back here soon. If not, well, take it easy. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.